MPO Bristol 2025. Been there, done that, got the... Hang on, wait, give me a moment. Much better. Now let's talk about MPO 2025 Bristol, which took place last weekend. Last weekend, I took a few pieces down to MPO in Bristol. So I needed to travel down the night before so that I didn't have a chaotic morning. And then after a quick sleep, waking up the next morning and driving down to the centre of Bristol, it's worth pointing out and getting the depressing, sad news out of the way. None of the models that I took to the competition got any sort of placement. There wasn't a commendation or a trophy or anything like that, kind of as expected. But that doesn't take away from the fun and the competition and the event, which we are going to talk about shortly. But before we do that, I thought what would be really, really good is go through the rough goodie bag of random gubbins that I bought from the vendors at the hall. A lot of these products are things that I've actually been looking to pick up anyway, but haven't really wanted to pay for things like shipping and wait the additional time compared to products that I've been able to pick up in person in my hobby store. Obviously, being an event with the vendors there, don't need to pay shipping, so I can just pick them up. And the first things I picked up were some products from Dirty Down, which I've seen used online, which is the Rust and Verdigris effect paints, which are water-based, water-soluble effects. As far as I'm aware, these are roughly similar to the sort of U-Rust things that I've been using in other videos with like my Nurgle, where there's an actual reaction that takes place during the application, but you can thin it down as well as remove some after the fact due to it being water soluble. If I've got any of that wrong, I will be doing a video where I go in a bit more detail and test it once I've had the products for a little bit longer. Besides that, we've also got some other elements that we like to jump into, and this kind of foreshadows a future video to a degree, because what we ended up picking up is some Liquitex acrylic inks in the iridescence, so the metallic inks from Liquitex that make inks that we use. And I'm going to be hopefully making a video containing these in not too long. You will have noticed that I've slowly been broadening out the collection of metallics that I've got here in the studio. And that might give you a little bit of a hint as to the nature of the video that we may be doing in the near future. Now, I also need to semi-confess and highlight a potential best practice that I don't tend to follow. I don't tend to buy individual paints of new ranges. What I like to do is go out and buy an entire range so that if I like this particular paint range, I have a large variety of them that I can rest on, know that they'll mix well together, and can just use a single range on a model if I want to. This has obviously bitten me in the past. I've got an entire collection of war paints, which are the original war paints from Army Painter, and they were terrible. I think there's only 3 or 4 that I've actually used which worked reliably, and my understanding is that's not a batch issue to the ones that I've got. The old war paints were horrendous and have now been redone. So I've been bitten by buying a large amount of boxes and paints and things like that. However, that doesn't stop me. What I ended up doing is buying a box of scale 75 paints. This has 63 non-metallic paints of various different colours and hues, and I have heard genuinely very good things about these colours. They come across very matte, is my understanding, which helps if you're aiming for that matte style without needing to completely reapply a matte varnish every single time. And also, it's a nice way for me to be able to experiment with those colours and potentially do a brand clash with different types of paint brands, say Citadel and Scale 75, and compare my pros and cons and my thoughts on the 2 different ranges, or even more than 2. Next is a product that I didn't actually buy, but I've now got a relatively large abundance of them. I have heard of these, but never actually seen them personally, and they are the Red Grass Games Painter's Arsenal cards. And essentially, these are cards that have painting guides on the other side, breaking down what to do with the particular colours and how to highlight particular areas. And they cover a lot of things. It can cover fire, leather, non-metallic, and there are a load of them. Conveniently, there were boxes of free available boosters that you could just take and were being regularly encouraged to take some. Meaning that I've actually ended up with a relatively large amount of these cards that I can now potentially use for videos or just trying out the techniques and brushing up on some skills based on these cards. Obviously, I got these for free, and I believe that these are actually sold as boosters as well. So morally, I'm not particularly keen on just showing off the content of every single card. Obviously, I've shown you a couple that you may be able to see if you freeze frame. Probably not, though. I will quickly run through showing off all of the cards that I've got going and demonstrating what the title of the thing is, as well as the artist who gave the actual recipe and guide, so that if you're interested in the product, you can see what sort of things are covered. But I will be masking off all of the actual guide itself because morally I think that's just the correct thing to do. Now, obviously, this is the mini painting page, which consists of multiple different things. It's the mini and the painting. We've talked about paints, which we've now added more to our collection. But did we pick up any minis? And yes, but we didn't pick up any Games Workshop miniatures. Obviously, this channel primarily focuses on painting miniatures, and those miniatures, due to my passion for Warhammer, tend to be Warhammer miniatures. I also seem to think that resonates with you quite well. If you enjoy that, do let me know. However, I've often looked at those sorts of one-off display models that you see professional painters painting, potentially other scales, busts, and things like that. However, I tend to find them quite expensive for what they are. Yes, it might be £50 for a relatively large-scale bust or creature, and in regards to Games Workshop, you may only get a character or a unit for that. But at least I know with Warhammer, I can add that to my army. Whereas a single one-off bust that's designed for as good as I could paint, there's that part of my mind that thinks that I'm going to ruin it. And that's why I've never really spent £50 on a display bust or something like that, even though it will probably help out my painting journey anyway, because it's a different muscle to test out. So I managed to get around that because I found a box, and that box essentially contained lots of different things. There was a company whose details I will shoot around now because I cannot pronounce it very well. I think it was El Greco, but I may be wrong on that front. But they essentially had a bin of misprints. They make the models that I am discussing, the sort of display quality paintable models, and they had a box of misprints, which essentially meant that it was £3 for whatever was in the box per bag. And I bought a fair few, so let's go through these. Now, as I said, all of these bags essentially cost £3 a pop, and we were able to go through it. It wasn't a blind dip. You didn't have to just stick your hand into a box and take out what you got. And the reason that they were misprints is some of them just had bits that were broken, so sword ends may have come off, or in the case of this large horse, all of the barding is mostly fine, but there are some bits that have come off. For example, the stirrup on one side is missing. I could just go around with a craft knife or clippers, remove the missing barding on the other side, or make it missing so that it's mirrored, and then it's going to be less noticeable that there's actually a problem. Alternatively, if we don't want to try and fix the model and have an entire model, we've got things like this little character that I believe is modelled after Sean Bean from Sharp as a rifleman. And from what I can tell, the rifle is bent and some of the straps that attach to it are now no longer attached. We could potentially fix that with a little bit of glue and straightening, but equally, this, from what I can tell, is perfectly fine from the waist up. So I could go in with a saw, remove it at the waist, keeping just that waist section, and turn it into a small bust of just the upward half part of the model, meaning that all of the damaged bits are just not there. And a lot of the things that I picked up are essentially the same. There may be small chips, maybe small damages, but for the hobby of just painting and improving, it makes it really accessible for me. And it means I don't have to spend £50 on one model. I've been able to spend £30 on 10 models, all of which are in various different styles, various different schemes, scales, everything, regardless of what I wanted to paint. Now, this is where I kind of want to throw it to you guys. Do you have an interest in me painting things besides GW stuff on the channel? Obviously, I do this because I enjoy it, but equally I want it to be valuable and of benefit to you guys. Otherwise, it is semi-pointless me doing it. And I enjoy Warhammer. That's what I've done since I was a child, and I think you do as well. But would you equally be interested in seeing various different techniques on semi-display style models and things other than GW? Let me know down in the comments below. And now it's time to come to the competition. We've gone through the things that I've bought and what we're planning to do. However, let's talk about the actual event. And I will say I really did enjoy the event. It was tiring, a lot of walking around, and there was a lot of people in sometimes a relatively small space. And there were disadvantages to that. I didn't get a good opportunity to take many photos of the entry models, and there wasn't very much room for filming. I did try and take as much footage as I could without getting in people's way or being a bit too obtuse. because I still partially don't have the confidence just to walk up to someone with a camera and hold it into their face. So apologies on that front. But you can hopefully see from the videos that I'm putting around now how the event looked. It was full of amazing painters. There were Golden Demon winners there. There were GW crew painters there. Even some of the winners were renowned people that you would expect to see in a placement. And I naturally am much below that level, and I kind of admitted that and acknowledged that in my previous video where I said what models I was taking. That still didn't stop that little bit of me getting slightly dejected. I know that there's room for me to improve, and I'm constantly striving for that. But seeing the lowest quality level above mine that was at that running did kind of give me that thought of, is it even worth carrying on? But after I'd gone into a corner, cried myself to sleep, and then come back, it wasn't actually anything that I needed to worry about. I saw it overall as a learning lesson. I got really close to some really, really, really nice models. I even got to get some nice photos and up-close looks of Golden Demon winning pieces. And that's actually helped me a lot. I've been able to see the way that those things have been handled to a degree and where I can potentially push up my game. The other benefit is that my two favourite pieces that I entered also got the opportunity to be looked over and given a little bit of feedback, which I've taken on board, and I'm going to try and build into other models in the future, potentially using these as a test model. And I am planning to go to MPO again next year if it's possible, and assuming the event goes ahead as planned. So I need a model for that, and I'm going to be painting up potentially just 1 or 2 entries and trying to actually push my level a little bit further, rather than just taking down a bunch of showcase models, which were more tabletop standard as opposed to display standard. And that's what I've taken away from it. I'm just being genuine and honest. But now you may have seen that Cult of Paint did the live show and have already announced all of the winners and all of those things. There is also going to be a link below, hopefully next to or near the affiliate link if you're looking and you know where you're going in the description. But around that section, I'm going to try and put a link to the MPO 2025 website, which should eventually have images of all of the models that were submitted and placed and things like that. So if you're actually interested to see the incredible artwork, then there should be some really nice photos there that you can go and check out. That aside, I am going to go over the quick final best in show, best in creative shout out, and we can see who won those places and how the room received it.
For the MPO 2025 Jibbo.
And the entire event essentially slowly folded down after that. That was the main ending at the point on the second day. We had the first day, which was mainly looking at the models. There was a couple of seminars, which I'm actually going to include a small snippet now, but I don't naturally want to share that information because people paid to go and see it, and I'm not just going to post it. But there's a little bit now that you can see them talking about it. And then we had day 2, which was the award show and the feedback if you were able to get it. And as I said, I did really, really enjoy the event. I will be going again. If you want to see the models that I took along to the event, as well as the one that I unfortunately left because the one that I'd spent 2 weeks on and was really, really heavy, got left on my painting table for the entire weekend and not entered into the show. So if you want to see the conclusion of that project, because it's not going to be on their website, check that out here. Otherwise, do remember to subscribe so that we can see you next time.